LT, my friend, it's almost upon us. The last ever wellness summit in Melbourne.
The last one ever?
Well, definitely the last one for at least 2 years, LT. That's right, this year's Wellness Summit will be the last one for the foreseeable future in Melbourne. It will be the biggest, the greatest, the most inspiring, the most empowering summit that you've ever seen.
The last one in Melbourne?
That's right, LT.
That's ridiculous. I can't believe my ears. But I guess if that's the case, then let's go to thewellnesssummit.com if you want to enter the code FINALMelbourne16. That's FINALMelbourne16 to get $100 off your regular price tickets. You get to enjoy 2 days of food, movement, and mindset on September 10th and 11th at the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre.
Hey, LT, did we say it's the last one?
It's the last one in Melbourne.
Oh, good. All right. I'm glad we told them. Hey, go to www.thewellnesssummit.com, enter those codes, save some money. See you at the summit.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Julie Tenner.
And I'm Bridget Wood. And this week we're talking creating space when you have none. And I think it's probably a catch cry of so many mothers where they want more time or more for themselves, and they have this sense that life is so overwhelming and children's needs are so all-encompassing that there's no opportunity to create space for yourself. And we want to explore, I guess, in this podcast, both of our own experiences with that, and then also how we can sort of flip that perspective a little bit to almost find the space, even when at first glance it would look like there is no room. You know, that life is so full that there actually is no room. Because I know in Julie's case, you know, there's some little rituals that you create in your life that, you know, can still be with the children all around, like in the house crazy, but you can still find those moments almost of solitude.
Yeah, definitely. I think why this is so important to talk about is because largely what you and I hear from women that we help and work with, and even our friends and friendship circles and wider communities, is all the reasons why they can't do the things they should be doing for themselves.
All the things that they love, the reasons why those things seem to get put on the back burner.
Yes, which I really just feel heartbroken about, because I'm sorry, but it's not reality. Like, we always find time for the things that are most important to us.
Yeah.
So if it's not, why not? And there is the belief systems that hold you back. You know, even all the reasons why you say you can't. Why can't you? Because you could.
Yeah, you really could. It's a choice that you're making. The can't is a choice. It's not simply forced upon you.
And the discomfort, the stuff that's in the way, the asking for help, the creation of space, all of that is the juicy self-growth stuff. No one said putting on your big girl pants was easy.
That's exactly right.
It's not.
And, you know, certainly our first intake of Loathing to Loving is a testament to that. You know, so many of and even watching people's transition through the different weeks, and some stuff was like, let's get to this, and then other stuff people were finding that resistance because, you know, when you start to peel back your own limiting beliefs around why you can't do certain things, you realise how you know, kind of fragile they are, really, you know, and realise how much it's actually you hooked on a story that tells you that you can't do something, rather than that being truth per se.
And the whole idea of having mastery over the creation or the manifestation of your future sounds like, so come on, I want to empower my future. But when you get down to this stuff, you go, oh my God, like I just can't.
Yeah, and that's really the reason why the vast majority of people don't live, you know, a truly inspiring life, because yes, you know, the mediocrity is not always, you know, juicy and fun, but it's also safe, right? You don't have to confront some of those. We've got a little person in the background.
I'm trying my best here, but I'm not mum. Hang on a minute.
Yes. So really, in talking, now that we've got Sylvie sorted, we think, this concept of aligning your life and living this inspired life and all that stuff sounds as juicy and exciting and like, yeah, let me at it, when, you know, you're not knee deep in the hard work that it often is to clear your stuff.
Yeah, the hard stuff, hey? The hard stuff we'd rather run from than face.
And the stories that we've become so attached to about the way things need to be.
Stories can become an identity.
Yeah, and when you don't have your story, then who are you? Which is, you know, why so often people will cling to stories which seem on the outset to be incredibly, you know, like not serving at all, but yet they are.
So we've called this podcast Creating Space When You Have None. So we're just giving you a quick overview of what we hope to kind of gloss over in this episode to help you start creating the space and meaningful change you want to see in your life. So let's start maybe with personal stories.
Yeah.
So Bridget, creating space in your life. So we all have none, right? There's no one person who's going with so much time in the world. Like, show me that mother anywhere. So let's even talk about you. You've got a newborn and you have a 3-year-old and you're running a business. That's all super busy.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of doing a whole rereading, like, you know, the parenting books and stuff like that. Which,
relearning.
Yeah, so relearning, you know, newborn behaviour and, like, you know, what's reasonable to expect of them and myself. And so then I've got kind of like the shoulding coming in the background as well, which if you subordinate to the shoulds, whether they're, you know, in a book or the people around you, that will also start to infringe on your perception of the spaciousness that you have. Like, you know, for instance, if a book's telling you that every time your child feeds, you should always be staring at them and giving them connection constantly. But that, yes, is beautiful, and I, you know, agree wholeheartedly that it's a lovely thing to do. But that is also going to be taking away perhaps from the time that you might have spent feeding to do a little bit of work, for example. And this is that classic thing of, you know, there is no one right way to do anything because everything has, you know, the benefits and drawbacks to it. And so I'm sort of finding my new normal, I guess, in terms of what space looks like for me and personal space, because really when you've got a newborn, there's no such thing as personal space. They are like, you know, you're a unit.
Yeah, it's actually the perfect kind of topic for this, isn't it? Because you literally have no space. You know, when we're talking about even in last week's podcast, my body is no longer mine, my space is no, like, there's not even, as kids get older, I think what gets easier is the spaciousness physically.
Yes.
That perimeter around you and the amount of time that they're not on you, you know, exponentially increases with their age. But this phase is very much you have no space because they're literally in your space all the time.
And then it's understanding, you know, bringing consciousness to your own feelings around that. You know, so recognising when I feel like stifled, which I've been pretty good and I haven't felt like that too much yet, but I'm very conscious of that feeling creeping up because I think that it's a normal human behaviour to crave a little bit of space, you know, like it's what we kind of need to refuel. And different people need different levels of that, you know, some people cope, you know, in a highly stimulating environments all of the time, and they cope with noise really well. Others, you know, and we know this with children, others need quiet time to almost reboot. And that so
sensory overload.
Yeah, and really, I think it's also getting to know yourself well enough to know what your needs are in that way. Separate from, you know, the stories, because there's the stories and then there's the how we're wired type thing too. But for me, certainly, you know, I mentioned in last week's podcast, it's definitely the shower. It's like, you know, the sacred time where I have, you know, nobody attached.
But you created the space for that. So you could easily say, I have no space. But what you've done is created intention in creating space.
Yeah,
so
that's
it hasn't. This is the thing that I say to everyone: there is never time. Time doesn't just happen upon you.
Yes.
You create time, and this is. I mean, you could go into what is time anyway, right? I mean, there's so many. We could get incredibly philosophical about it. Time is not one rational thing because we know time can go on the blink of an eye, or time can seem to drag on forever.
Yes.
This is the concept of time is so based on your perception of where you're at and therefore what is reality, blah, blah, blah. So when we're talking about you know, everyone has the same amount of hours in a day. So how does someone get X, Y, and Z done and someone else not?
Yeah.
Well, it's because you're creating the time to do that, not because
And you're being
you
intentional with the
happen-
time you have. You know,
Yes.
I think, you know, everyone is guilty of the mindless Facebook scroll. Oh shit, I've just lost 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and getting caught up in reading stuff that you had no intention of reading, but it's there, so you do. You know, and calling yourself out on stuff like that, you know,
Yeah.
and about whether that's really effective use of your time, whether that's how you want to use
Yeah.
your time, whether that fills you up. Because so often I think of it like, and I've done this a little bit recently because I've had so much, you know, feeding time. I found myself doing that, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I was saying to somebody, you know, it's almost like watching junk TV. Like you feel a bit like, you know, like flat after it and icky and just kind of detached. And that's what, you know, it can feel like to not be intentional with how you are using your time. And when you're not using it for things that fill you up or inspire you, you're instead using it for things that just consume attention without any, you know, joy in it, I think. And I think that happens and that can creep in even more when your life, it feels uninspiring to you. You know, when your life feels uninspiring to you, you gravitate towards, you know,
the fillers.
yeah, the stuff, you know, the TV show that you just have to watch, or, you know.
I often think that's like a numbing response.
Yeah.
That, and I think this with people that experience a lot of drama within their lives as well. That in general, what I notice about those women is that they're kind of living in that emotionally grey zone. They're feeling fairly disconnected. They're feeling fairly numb. They don't have they're not living aligned and inspired enough to have these huge capacity to reach, obtain and feel ecstasy and joy as much as the deeper depths. So they're kind of living somewhere only in the middle, because when you cut off the nasty sister, you lose her heightened one as well, right? So people start living, women in particular, start living in these areas in the middle and then say, why do I feel so numb?
Yes.
And I think it's often we find very subconscious, creative ways to feel when we're living there, because we're not consciously bringing it in an aligned, inspired life. So we're looking for those hits of highs and lows because they come. We look for fear. We look for reasons to create huge attachment or surges of love for our children or our homes or our houses by watching negative TV as much as we do by watching huge love stories and soaring with those, or huge drama and feeling angry about them. Like we are you know, when you're doing that yo-yo dance.
It's almost like, because, you know, we need to feel all those things as humans. You know, it's important. Like, all those experiences and emotions are there for us to feel. But what you're talking about here, it's almost like the way that you're feeling them is completely ungoverned. You know, there's no, like, you know, alignment.
So it's like a subconscious drive that you need to feel a spectrum, but because you've consciously cut it off in your life because this isn't okay and this isn't okay and this isn't okay, and in doing that you've lost her sister spectrum on the other side of joy, ecstasy and rapture. You're living in these kind of middle tones, this kind of grey area of only these things are acceptable in my world. And then we wonder why we, you know, feel numb, why our yonis are numb, why we can't feel huge love and gushes of adoration with our partners, why we don't feel connected to our lives, why we hate our jobs and yet we still keep to, like, we kind of live here. And so subconsciously we have these drivers to search for these surges of energy because it is human nature, right? And we're still trying to piece back the whole because what you're denying is going to keep calling you back in. But in this, you know, subconscious kind of way. So I often think when you're losing that time on things like news and social media and high drama horror movies or something, that isn't in essence what you're searching for, because you haven't consciously called it in within yourself. How do you see
no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, because I mean that's the thing. It's about, yes, those states are okay to feel, but wouldn't it be far more fulfilling to, say, use the dopamine hit that you're getting from watching some TV show to direct that into creating something that's inspiring to you, you know, like kind of, you know, creating a, you know, whether it's a business or, you know, putting that energy into something for your children and you know, getting that high from that as opposed to needing to go and get it from some, you know, short-term entertainment.
Yeah.
But it's a
thing of consciously carving out time, though. And you and I have talked about this even from the perspective of getting up earlier to do work before our official day starts.
Yeah.
That time doesn't happen upon us. We create it. We intentionally carve it out of our worlds to create something that gives us energy. It's inspiring. It's aligned. It does all of those things that build and give us energy. They don't take away from us, even though we're in essence losing sleep in which to do them.
Yeah.
It's that tap into the higher self, to the spiritual purpose, whatever you want to call it, that self feeds energy rather than it feeling like it's taking away from you.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like, since I'm in the whole newborn sleep thing, they talk about the concept of sleep begets sleep. So the more they sleep, the better they sleep.
Yeah.
It's almost like the more you tap into your energy, the more that well just continues to provide.
Yes, which is totally true. You know, when we're thinking about this, creating space when you have none, I think the biggest story that probably gets in the way is the expectation of what space and replenishment is supposed to look like for women.
Yeah.
And I think often is this tiny, tiny spectrum of I can only refuel when, and begin your list, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
But generally what I notice is these hugely lofty ideas that you could only recharge and refuel when you have no kids around you.
Yes.
So hence list all the reasons why you can't ever
Refuel.
not have all kids around you. And only if you spend money by going out and having a facial or seeing a movie or going out to dinner or going out for a night with the girls, and then give me all of the stories and the reasons why you can't do that.
And I mean, it's normal to feel like that because these are cultural constructs, you know,
Yes, they are.
that we're surrounded by, that say that this is what giving back to yourself or this is what self-care looks like.
Yes.
But that doesn't have to look like that. And it's about getting creative,
Yes.
which we're going to go through with your own personal experiences.
Look, and I say this with love because I totally get this story. Like, when I think back, you know, over decade of parenting, I totally hung on to this story. And I still see so many women around me playing this out, that we don't have a toolkit or a sisterhood around us, or possibly that we ourselves have even tapped into what actually refuels our energy, what set of circumstances gives to us rather than takes away. Because how many times have you heard of women who go to the movie, who have their nails done, who have gone for a massage, but they come back and they're still feeling tension and tightness and crankiness, and it's like they never left? Well, then that activity is not what fills you up.
No. It's almost like the Band-Aid, right?
Well, it's an injected belief that it should.
Yeah.
When in essence, it's not what lights you up. If you don't walk away from something feeling a more luscious sense of self within, it is not your activity. And you have to start pulling in those big girl boundaries around what your space commands. Because you are now the queen, my love. If you have entered this phase, if you are listening to this podcast, you are in the queen space. Now, the queen isn't just la-di-da, wear a crown and look pretty. The queen is the woman who knows her boundaries. She knows what she will and won't tolerate, and she has no issue in nailing down those yeses and nos.
And she knows what her recipe is for fulfillment.
Exactly. She utterly knows that, and she owns it. And this is what you need to be able to do for yourself. I mean, this is like the essence of reconnecting with your alignment, with who you are, with finding your vibe and your back in loveness with motherhood. I mean, it all hinges on this feeling of self, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This feeling of inner spaciousness, connection and alignment. Because if you feel those things, those three things look different to every woman who owns them.
Yes.
There is no one way for them to be. But the ownership of those is what creates your meaningful life. Now, yes, that is knowing your values that you and I talk about, and certainly underpins our not only this podcast, but the course, but this is also knowing your yeses and your nos and why those boundaries are uncomfortable for you, where have they come from, what do they bring up for you, and how do you dismantle them? And then putting those boundaries in place, because no one's holding you back, my love, except you. You know, you come up with all these reasons around why you can't. And I was the banner girl for this, right? There were so many reasons why I couldn't ever have child-free time. Back then, that's what I was really searching for. Because, you know, my in-laws did this or they never offered, or I had all of these stories I'd made up already conceived in my head about them and why they couldn't help me, or not that I was ever asking for anything. But that was my perception.
Yeah, that was just the,
and this whole story around why my mother was never there for me. So, again, I hadn't asked her.
Yeah.
Hadn't tried to put anything in place, just had already decided it was not an avenue. And all these guilty reasons around why it wasn't okay for me to not be around at the times my husband was.
Yeah.
And that I had no extended community beyond that. So, basically, I was stuffed, right? I mean, if you can't call on your family, you decide you have no other community, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that when times got desperate, you know, throw my hands up in the air and go, I just need time out. And that would be, oh, well, I'd have to leave the house, and it would have to be reasonably dramatic in essence, you know, and it would have to be child-free time where I was doing something to nourish myself, or there might be a story around why we didn't have the money that I couldn't do this, and then more story that played into our partnership around that. Like, story upon story upon story, when in essence the spaciousness was always within me. Yeah,
and that was always there for you to tap into at any time. But we need to know how to do that.
Yeah, well, we need to know who we are. We need to know what's important to us, and we need to know or have a toolkit for dismantling the beliefs that come up.
Because, and I mean, the first step for anything, you know, like this. And you're probably listening to this going, oh, ouch, yep, okay, I see my pattern here.
Yeah.
The first step is having awareness of it.
Isn't it?
You know,
awareness changes things.
Because you cannot shift anything unless you're aware of the dynamic at play, unless you're aware of the feelings that are coming up for you around certain things. Yes. And they will be possibly quite familiar feelings for you.
Yes.
Around certain triggers. It's like, oh, okay, there's work.
They will absolutely have memory.
Yeah. That's where that's like kind of the little, you know, glimmer that says there's work to do here. Hey, you know, we can shift something. Yeah.
Totally. Whereas, you know, flash forward to where I am now, which is living a very aligned life, and yet the spaciousness that I feel is not when I'm away from my children. It's when I'm in the throes of incredible busyness. Now, I have 3 kids. I have one who's 3, who's, as Bridget will attest, she's like full on in all these amazing ways, but geez, they're hard to parent.
Yeah.
And then I have a nearly 9-year-old and a 10-and-a-half-year-old who are going through the beginnings of puberty and super busy lives. And plus, I love kids and family as a top value. So there is never a day when I don't have more than my own children in my house.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever popped past my house?
It's like 5. It's probably up
It's like, seriously, my house is like a constant moving zoo. And I love it, right? I love it. So I wouldn't change that for the world. But, geez, if you look at it, there's no spaciousness because I, like, manifest my life down to the hour, right? At 10, I'm doing this. At 11, I'm doing that. At 12, I'm doing this. And I have already pre-planned lunch and dinner and snacks and who's got to go where. Because if I don't, I feel overwhelmed.
Yeah. And that's key, right?
And that's key. So my organisation is up there as a skill set for running my day. But even though I have my masculine in my high organisation, while I'm in those things, I'm living in my highest values. I'm cooking. I'm with kids. I'm watching children flourish at activities. Or to some extent, whatever activity that is involves a social network. So I'm socialising with community, which is my other top value.
Yeah.
And often what happens is I meet these incredible women who then become business people of some description. So bring in the business as well. So
there's a real fluidity to it.
Isn't it? So even though my day looks crazy and I could easily say, I haven't had time to sit down for a cup of tea today, incredible spaciousness because I'm like freaking loving it. And if I get to the point where I'm not, I have no issues in going, here's what I need to do to come back, because I know what my recipe is. I need to spend time. I need to start that routine of getting up half an hour earlier again to start writing on my book again. Like I'm writing a How to Run a Blessing Way book at the moment, which I'd had on the back burner and had been doing nothing with because I'd fallen out of the pattern of getting up to do it.
Yeah.
And I started the pattern, which for me, when I'm getting back into a pattern, just starts with getting up half an hour earlier than what's comfortable. And that half an hour then becomes effortless. And then I bring it back another half an hour. And that's how I do it until I've got my spaciousness back. And yet doing it, I'm like, bang, inspired again. Oh my God, how did I forget I loved this so much? You know, and it fuels into all of the, before my kids have even gotten up, I've had this huge dip into the feminine and women, and I'm thinking about circles, and I'm thinking about communities.
And you know, but you're in flow.
I'm in flow.
That is the goal, is to find that flow.
Yes.
Which can sometimes be quite elusive in the craziness of motherhood, and you know, to actually give yourself time and space within your day, which might be getting up at 5 or 5:30.
Yes.
You know, to start your day with something that feels so aligned.
Yes.
You know.
And I have to say now, I'm not adverse to outsourcing. If I'm feeling cranky with my youngest, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I have a set of sentences that I bring my husband and I say to him, I'm not asking for your permission. I just need you to tell me that I can give myself permission to let X, Y, and Z go. And just being able to speak, he kind of acts, I suppose, as my internal world, being able to kind of have that dialogue and hear him in the other end chuckling, going, there's nothing, like, I don't care. So, that's fine. I'll say it if you need me to say it. But, you know, even just having that lets me let go of a story I was holding on to.
Yeah.
And, you know, knowing I have all of these lists of things I need to get done, there might be a friend. I start getting creative. Who can do them for me? Who's running past a shop? They could pick that up for me. Have I got eggs in the cupboard and I can not worry about dinner? You know, had one of my kids have an active service and they can cook dinner. Like,
Nice.
I start getting creative around, if I know I need spaciousness, it doesn't have to just be me that gives it to me, but I have to start the manifestation and the creation of time.
And it comes with asking yourself really good questions. You know, it's rather than getting stuck in a rut and saying, this just has to get done and I'm the only one to do it, blah, 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 martyrdom.
No, let it go.
Yeah.
Or find a way to creatively get it done.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to involve you. And if there's guilt and story that comes up, then great. Let's delve into that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic. So, and what will actually happen, I realise now that often I don't even have to ask. I feel like, and tell me what you think about this, Bridget, but I feel like the more aligned I'm becoming, the more my powers of manifestation are speeding up. So on Friday, I had a super crazy day, and there was like this list of about 3 jobs I knew I wasn't going to actually get to, or to get to, I was going to have to miss out on these other things of seeing my son play footy and blah, blah, blah. And as I'm having this debate in my head, a friend rings me going, can I do this for you? Can I go and pick up the cold veggies? Can I?
Amazing.
And I was like, yes. And then I'm in my head going, this is amazing. Yeah. I just was thinking about it. And someone else has come into flow with me.
Yeah, that's pretty
And now
powerful.
I get to go and, which you might have seen the post on Facebook, go and watch my son play footy in Interschool Sports, chat to the mums, the kids get to have a run around, and then I got to play bubbles with the preschool as well, watching my son play footy. Like, talk about spaciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, you know, where you can be present. And, that's just beautiful.
It totally is. And then I do things like you do. So I create time. So if I know I'm getting cranky, why am I getting cranky? Is it because I'm missing out on my work time? Is it because I'm not connecting with myself? And if I'm not connecting with myself, why am I not? Actually, which is perfect, because just this week I had a conversation with my husband after I had this amazing healing with Amanda from Reiki on Monday. And we were talking about rituals for connection with self. And I was saying, but I have stuff I do each day, but not a practice. You know, I have things I kind of weave in and out as I feel myself in a day, and choose sensual and sensuality type things to bring me back into my body, which we've talked about in the previous podcast. But I don't have a class I turn up to every week, you know, other than swimming, but you could argue I mean, I could argue that, but in terms of feeling sensual, that it doesn't necessarily fill that cup for me.
There is that habit of having regular practices can be really, really fulfilling.
That's totally right. So I actually said to my husband this week that what has fallen out of the wayside for me is my jade egg practice. And so I said to him, there's these times, there's one morning on a Monday morning if my sister has my daughter, before I do anything, I'm coming home to do a jade egg practice.
Yeah.
And these 2 nights a week, I want you to pretend I'm not home. And what do you need to do that? And he said, I need to be able to come home, get changed and have dinner before you disappear. And I went, fine, deal. You come home, I've got the kids till you've come home, got changed, had dinner, and then we'll swap.
Yeah.
I'm, in essence, gone. I don't want to know. And and it's so good because for me, I could see myself in those moments struggling to walk away because it would be easier to help my husband with the kids than to go, okay, see ya.
Yeah.
But I really am over bedtime. I've had enough.
Yes.
Everyone can just put themselves to bed.
Yeah. I'm done.
I'm done. I'm done by that point.
Yeah.
And so it's really go and do your jade egg or do bedtime. What do you reckon I'm going to choose?
Totally.
So if I set it up where, I've got my husband on side, it's a regular practice, it's also creating spaciousness. So I know when I get up to do inspired work, when I get up and create the time, even though staying in bed feels so much better in the moment than getting up to have a swim, I know on the other side of that what it gives me and in the honouring of my body to actually go and do that.
Yeah.
And then creating practice of jade egg gives me more spaciousness
absolutely.
than what I would have previously.
Yeah, than the burnout or the resentment that comes with just,
And this is the thing with our course too, is so many women we heard, I don't have time for that, I can't do it, I don't have the space to fit that in my life. But this is the flip around what spaciousness is.
Yeah.
Because unless you change what you're doing now, nothing is changing.
Exactly.
To create spaciousness within yourself, you have to deal with yourself because you are in your own way right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to get out of your way, you can't just do this, hands off, just let it go. Seriously, the more I hear that, the more I'm like, how do you reckon she's going to do that? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Unless you have a toolkit
It's so
and you have a way through it.
It's like lip service, you need it.
I don't even understand it. Now it makes me angry. Now I'm like, are you giving her a toolkit on how to do that? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And it will, in essence, mean something different to each of us. But when you know what fills you up, rather than taking away your energy, and you create the time to do it, you get more spaciousness within yourself, which allows you to be more present, more connected, or in essence, get more done in a day than what you thought was previously possible, because you are internally the creation of your time. Time is not static. Time is a feeling and an intention within yourself. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love all of it. I'm kind of thinking so much over what I've seen you implement in terms of creating that spaciousness in a crazy life.
What have you seen?
Oh, just, but seeing how, you do the swimming and you find the moment, you find the pockets of time to do your book and, to really value the central stuff enough to say that, yes, this is more important right now than anything else. And that this is not self-indulgent, but rather fuels my...
It's utterly necessary.
Yeah, it fuels my whole life. It infuses my family.
It totally does, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you said that, because I feel like this is the key that we give lip service to and we don't get.
Yeah.
This whole thing of I put back in and I give more out, and then we don't do it.
Yeah.
Now, there's all those reasons and we like dealing with those reasons, but it comes down to... those choices are not to take away from my family. No. It's because they give to my family.
It's really a prime example of that concept that you put your own oxygen mask on before you put your children's on. In that plain example. I don't think that we say this enough, that if you don't do that for yourself, you'll be running on empty.
And babe, no one's doing it for you.
And your kids are not going to get the best of you.
No.
If you're constantly, feeling like you have to serve everybody else before yourself.
Yeah.
It's a recipe
or
for burnout.
waiting for someone to save you.
Yeah.
Waiting for the white knight to see you're burnt out and come and rescue you. You are your own white knight. You are your own hero and heroine.
And wouldn't you rather be? You know, like, wouldn't that be so much
I think
more...
the easier route would be to have someone else do it for you.
Yeah.
But if someone else did it for you, you'd miss all the learnings on the way.
Yeah,
And in
yeah.
essence, no one is, right? No one is. Because when you do it for yourself, it's even a larger spaciousness because you're no longer relying on a set of circumstances or on someone else to do that for you and their timelines that go with it. It's the sense of self-worth within you that says, this is what I need to feel like this. And when I feel like this, here's what happens in my world.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. That's what an aligned life is. It doesn't look one way, but it feels one way.
And tuning into what that feeling is for you. What is it that you need to create in your life to create that feeling?
Yeah.
To create that feeling of connection
And
of
don't
inspiration.
wait for the spaciousness, for the perfect set of circumstances.
Yeah.
When this happens. Oh, one day when I get to hear, no.
Yeah.
Every day, right now, you have an opportunity to create spaciousness within yourself. But you can't. What's that? The definition of insanity is approaching the same problem.
Yeah.
No, the same problem in the same way. Is that?
Yeah. It's, you know, kind of like approaching a problem with the same set of thinking that created it. You know, like you need to actually ask more quality questions to transcend.
Step outside of that.
To transcend
to
that.
it.
Yeah.
Nothing's changing while you're not.
Yeah. It's gonna require you to step up, for you to ask better questions, for you to, you know, be more resourceful, be more creative, you know, figure out your way out. Your way into more inspiration, more fulfillment, more connection, more joy and spaciousness.
More feeling of you. You as a woman, you as a whole, you as a
And you know
central
that
being.
feeling, you know what that's like, you know that sense of authenticity, that sense of congruence with, yes, this is me.
Yeah.
You know, we all do so much better and our families do so much better when we operate from that place. So I'm sitting here with like what sounds like a purring cat on my chest.
Oh no.
And, you know, the concept of spaciousness, if there was ever a time that it feels like there's no space, it's, you know, in that newborn haze, right?
Totally.
And so this has been a really useful podcast for me to get back into, okay, well, what does it look like for me when, you know...
Sometimes we just need a gentle reminder, don't
Yeah,
we?
yeah.
All of us, right? This is a practice. Like, you know how I said I only had that conversation last week about my J-Day practice because I realised it had fallen by the wayside.
And you were feeling like something was missing.
And I was feeling it was missing. I went, let's bring it back.
Yeah.
Let's create the space to bring it back, knowing what it gives me, what it gives you, what it gives our relationship, and therefore what it gives our family.
Yeah, so I guess let's touch on some of the tools then, practically speaking, that our listeners can take away from this to cultivate a bit of that.
Totally. So I think really where this starts, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Bridget, is knowing your values.
Yeah, it's number
which I would
one.
say go back to our podcast on values, of which there are several, or totally join us for our next Loathing to Loving intake in November, and you can sign up for that now, and we would love to take you through that because that was pretty profound for a lot of women.
It was, and I think, you know, within that, it's also becoming aware of when you're expecting yourself to live in somebody else's, you know. So
when it's injected and when it's really authentically yours.
Yeah, and that can simply be a practice of, okay, today I'm going to listen to all of the times that I hear myself say the word should. Because whenever you say, oh, I should really do that,
write it down.
It's not important to you. No. It's actually not.
But wouldn't it be interesting to write it down and have a look what those common themes are?
You know, and it's a great one to, you know, everyone's got an iPhone or some kind of smartphone. Create a little notes page in there and take note of whenever you should on yourself. And then you can do a bit of an inventory at the end of the day and go, oh, wow.
Or Facebook it to us and we'll, go through it.
Yeah, because I think it's a really important start to see when you're expecting yourself to live outside what's important to you. And that if there's ever a recipe for unfulfillment, that's it. Because you're always comparing yourself to some kind of fantasy self, which is never going to come true because it's not you.
Yeah, that's totally right.
So yeah, values is super key, I think, for this.
And when you know your values, you know what lights you up. And when you know what lights you up, you know what gives you energy. And you know what takes away from that energy. And you have a toolkit to put back that energy.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, how do I create the space to do those things that light me up? Because when a woman is lit up, that literally cascades as an energy bomb out from her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are the center of your family's universe, believe it or not. You are the creation being within this cycle. It's your vibe that's going out here. And all those reasons why you can't create the time to do those things that light you up, they are where the gold is at. And that stuff is what we pull apart most weeks.
Yeah, and I think, example of how to, maybe make that real for you is once you've defined what those things are that light you up, and maybe your story has been, I have no time because I'm always with the kids. Okay, well, how can you find that with your children?
Yeah.
How can you, if it's, exercise, or how can you get the kids involved? What's something that, again, going back to our win-win podcast, how can you...
Is it getting out in nature?
Yeah, getting out in nature,
Yeah. Is it cooking?
What is it? And how can you put a creative spin on it to still make that fulfilling for you when your initial thought is, oh no, I have no time for that, or I have no space for that? Because there always is. It's just asking, you've just got to think more creatively about it.
Rope in a tribe, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Whenever motherhood's feeling like drudgery, I just rope in a tribe. Let's go have coffee, let's go to the park, and all of a sudden life is fun again.
Then you've got connection.
Yeah.
Which is really key. We crave that.
It really is. So if you've got questions from today's podcast, if there's certain beliefs that have really come up for you and you're not sure where to go with them, please feel free to Facebook us and we will do our best to work through it. Or if you have a question, we may even do a podcast answer to that, which we're happy to keep anonymous as well. That's no problems for us. And it, like last week's episode, gives us this fantastic juicy topic to really kind of munch into, which is great for us to do that for you and for us. So as I think we both mentioned, we're excited. We've got our second run of our Loathing to Loving program opening up for a November 7 intake.
Yes.
And that is available to sign up to on nourishingthemother.com.au. Now that's a 5-week online program, and we interact with you during that 5 weeks and walk you through the process of going from loathing to loving in your life and in your body and in your relationship, because it flows out from you.
Yes.
So we would love to have you along. We had 30 women with us last time, and it was just blew our minds how amazing it was, wasn't it?
It was pretty awesome, yeah.
So please have a look at that. And to connect with you, Bridget?
Yeah, suburbansandcastles.com. And you, Jules?
thepleasurenutritionist.com. And please rate us on iTunes. I forget to say that. Please do that. That helps iTunes find us. And today is the last day to rate us on the Wellness Couch best podcast you love the most,
that'd be cool too.
podcasters you love the most. So there's a link on our Facebook page. If you have 2 seconds, because it's literally a click the box, we would dearly love for you to vote for us so that at the Wellness Summit, we've got a bit of a tribe behind us. That would be super awesome.
Yeah,
so if you have
great.
2 seconds to do that, that would be great too.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, and we will see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.